Jiu Jitsu. Jiu Jitsu is no joke. It takes years to master.
Martial arts are a vehicle for developing your human potential.
Training in BJJ offers a powerful lens through which to examine some primary human concerns: truth versus delusion, self-knowledge, ethics, and overcoming fear.
There's more philosophy in our mats than actually philosophy in any Ivy League school.
Welcome to Jiulosophy.
All right, everybody, welcome to the first episode of Jiulosophy.
Jiulosophy. Welcome.
It's Jiu Jitsu here, accompanied by
Iki, aka Nutella,
aka Nutella,
Yeah.
aka Haish.
Yeah.
And yeah, guys, we thought it'd be a really cool idea to start a podcast. The name of the podcast is Jiulosophy, where basically Iki and I are going to be talking about the things that we always talk about, which is jiu-jitsu. Does that sound about right, Iki?
Sounds about right. And it's in a way it's about like jiu-jitsu and how it kind of reflects in every other aspect of life.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, there'll be a lot of times where Iki and I are talking about things that happen to us in our life, things that we see in life, and without fail, we always bring it back to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
We always find a way to say, oh, this reminds me of that one time in jiu-jitsu, or this is what we've been working on in jiu-jitsu. So we thought it'd be really cool to actually get this stuff recorded and see what you guys think. So,
Yeah, in a way it's like a conversation. Hopefully it's not just a conversation between us, but it's like, it's like we're all in the same room, whoever's listening.
exactly.
Hi, Mom.
No, I don't think my mom wants to listen to this.
Yeah, I think she listens to enough of it when you're talking about jiu-jitsu, but
Exactly.
yeah, man. We thought the first topic of the podcast would be us talking about how we got into jiu-jitsu.
Yep, that's about right. Iki, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I mean, like my story is pretty short. Like I was going through like depression, man. Like it's like 1 year. Like my grandfather died. My aunt died.
Wow.
Straight up, like one after the other. It's like less than 3 months in between. I was just like, and then I came to live in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like also a little bit of like staying homesick. I was just so depressed.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, like I thought there was something wrong with me. And one of my close friends, since like we're kids, he was doing jiu-jitsu for like a year and a half at this point. And I was like, bro, I think I'm gonna go to the psychologist. It's like, fuck that shit. Go to jiu-jitsu, bro.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. He was preaching this like for months.
Wow.
It's like, nah, just go to jiu-jitsu. Go to one class. I went to one class and yeah, man, like I fell in love. It was straight away.
Yeah, so you noticed like immediate
Honestly,
benefits?
I'm lying.
Uh-huh.
I went to one class and then like I called him like, yeah, that was nice and I really enjoyed it, but
Yeah.
I wasn't as consistent.
Yeah.
And then I went to one class with Luis.
Yeah.
Like the first time I went to no gi after being like 6 months in.
Yeah.
No, 3 months in, and he's like, I asked a question, like
Yeah.
I didn't understand, and then he turns at me and he's like, of course, you never come. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
It's like my first time here. Like,
Yeah.
but then like that made me want to go, and I'm like, I really wanted to go. Like, so I was like, nah, man, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna show.
Yeah.
But yeah, like anyway, so that was my story with jiu-jitsu, and honestly, it helped me a lot dealing like with my anxiety,
Yeah.
with just like feeling like a lot of, I guess, pressure,
Definitely. I mean,
emotional, and
I
just
think
being cool.
I think that jiu-jitsu is one of those things where I think a lot of people would benefit from things like meditation, for example, but we don't necessarily know how to meditate the correct way. And so jiu-jitsu is one of those things where you're kind of forced to meditate for those times that you're at jiu-jitsu. You're not thinking about the other stressors in your life. You're not thinking about the things that cause you trouble.
Yeah.
You're focused on what you're doing. You're so present. You're there. It's a beautiful thing, really.
Yeah, and it's like, as much as it's physical, it's also very like emotional, because it's like you're expressing yourself with your whole body. Like,
Yeah.
like it's like yeah, but enough of me. How did you get into jiu-jitsu? It's my favorite story of all time.
Yeah, I mean, my story is not as let's say, emotional, but it's kind of funny, to be honest with you. I was a kid in high school, growing up in Florida, and there were a few guys at my high school that were kind of seen as like the bullies. Shout out to those bullies if you ever happen to listen to this podcast, because in reality, I wouldn't be afraid of you anymore. But anyway, I used to go to a bunch of house parties in high school, and these bullies would show up, and they wouldn't necessarily, hurt anyone, but they would kind of stand around like intimidating people, if you will. And there was one time where I was standing with my friend Arthur, and Arthur turned to me and he said, I could beat up those guys. And I'm thinking in my mind, like,
by the way, like, how big are these bullies?
they're pretty big. They're all on the football team. That's American football for our English listeners.
How old were you guys?
I was like 17 at this time.
Yeah.
So I was a junior in American high school, which is like third year out of the fourth year. But and he turns to me and he's like, "Oh, I could easily beat up those guys." Mind you, Arthur is like a pretty small guy.
Yeah.
And I turned to Arthur and I said, "What is wrong with you? Like, what makes you think that you could stand a chance against these guys?" And they were big guys, to be fair. And he turns to me and he goes, "I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu." And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, that's like, saying, "Oh, I do karate, I do taekwondo, I do kung fu." All these things that you've heard are like kind of, sure, okay, that's fine. That works in your dojo, but what makes you think that this would help you against these really big football players? And he says to me, he's like, "Trust me, come train with us. I train at this gym down the road, and you'll see what I mean." And so, of course, I was intrigued. I was in high school, and I begged my mom. I said, "Mom, please take me to this jiu-jitsu gym." And so, the Monday rolls around, and I go with my mom. I'm super embarrassed to be going into this pretty tough gym with all these guys sparring, and I'm there with my mom. And my mom's taking me to sign up. But anyway, I end up signing up, and mind you, Arthur never came to a training session. I never saw him again training. I saw him at school, and I would always ask him, "When are you going to come train? When are you going to come train?" He always had some excuse. But I did that first training session. I got choked so many times by guys much smaller than me, even 17-year-old John. And I was hooked on it. And that was my journey. Luckily, I never had to face those bullies. And I still don't think Arthur ever trained again.
That's crazy, man. Like, so that's 2006.
That's must have been 2008. 2008.
Shit.
So I've been in the rap game for years.
Damn, son.
Yeah, but unfortunately, jiu-jitsu wasn't always consistent in my life.
Yeah.
But it's always been a part of my life, if that makes any sense. It's always been something that I've been able to come back to, especially like as you said, when times are tough. I think jiu-jitsu is so amazing because it's always a place you can go to relieve your stress. You're always going to be surrounded by amazing people.
Yeah.
People who you wouldn't necessarily be friends with if it wasn't for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So
it's like an anchor, like almost like I was watching this interview with a rapper. Like one of my favorite rappers. They're talking about like how when they're touring, they never stop in the same place.
Yeah.
They're always moving. And it's like, man, if I don't have like, and he says like he doesn't buy coffee out for breakfast.
Yeah.
He makes his own coffee, like, and he makes it the same way every single time. So that like even though they're on the road, it kind of anchors him to something that's like, okay, something that reminds him of home, like keeps like a structure, like almost like a morning ritual.
Yeah.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu is like a ritual, I guess, that like anchors emotions in a weird way, right?
Definitely. It's like no matter how bad your day is, there's always a place to go, a thing to do. It's you can always look forward to that moment that you train again. Am I boring you?
Oh my god, John.
My story wasn't that good. But...
Nah, not really. I just bad sleeping night.
Okay.
But on the other note, we're trying to keep this one short, like, trying to dip our feet, not, how do you say it? Like,
Yeah,
what's
dip
the
our
expression?
feet in the pond.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know what it's saying about, it's, literally, guys, we wrote topics and like I'm forgetting what is the next topic, and I was trying to segue into it,
Yeah.
and it's like it didn't go that smooth. What's the next topic, John?
I think so. Let's see. We talked about why we want to start this podcast.
Yeah.
We talked about how we got into jiu-jitsu. Let's talk about a little bit about where we want this podcast to go. Like, what
Yeah.
can the people who are listening look forward to? I know you have a lot of great ideas.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I mean, the way we see it, it's like a companion, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like it's a journey we're going through it, and we want to share that with people. But we want it to be valuable, right? In a way that we're gonna bring guests uh, from jiu-jitsu, people that have been training for years and how jiu-jitsu impacted their life, ask them about training ideas and concepts, blah blah. But most importantly, this podcast is not so much about techniques, but it's more about how jiu-jitsu relates to life.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really cool, and also we really hope to bring some really valuable guests onto the podcast. You know, like our Professor Louise has an amazing story that we'd love for him to be able to share with everybody, and just kind of give him and guests like Louise the platform to kind of talk about what they find amazing about jiu-jitsu. Um, because we're lucky enough to train at one of the best gyms in the world,
yeah,
and we get to meet all these super cool people. But a lot of times, you know, we're training. We only have 5-10 minutes to talk with them after training.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to just be able to sit down with them and have like a real, honest conversation about jiu-jitsu.
it's crazy, man. Last year alone, I met 3 world champions. It's
Yeah.
like preposterous.
Yeah, not many gyms can say that they've got such amazing people just rolling through casually.
Yeah, and yeah, man, it's it's very inspirational, right? Like, and yeah, I guess this is like this is the Oprah of Jiu-Jitsu podcast, guys. That's pretty much it. You know?
Oprah's pretty good.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So Oprah, Deepak Chopra. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
We won't be giving out any free cars or anything like that.
Yeah. Maybe a book club, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. But
You know what I wanted to talk about? Let's backtrack a little bit,
Yeah.
and maybe share some funny stories. Um,
how did you get your name, John Jitsu?
oh, that's not a funny story though.
Yeah.
Like I can talk about that,
Yeah.
but it's kind of along the same lines as to what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Can you talk about like the first time you walked into London Fight Factory? What was that like? Like, okay, first time meeting Louise.
I'd say no. I wouldn't say like I think like the first like huge highlight of
Yeah.
like our like coach was like, so I just moved from beginners to intermediate, and
Yeah.
that's the class that he gives.
Mhm.
And I was sparring with someone. It was no gi. That's how I got like my name. Like I was sparring with someone, and I tapped to pressure.
Yeah,
So he calls me to the side like, hey, come here. I need to talk to you.
one of the deadly sins in jiu-jitsu, tapping to pressure.
Exactly.
Go on.
And he tells like, you know, this like, because I speak Portuguese. That's my first language, but it's not Brazilian Portuguese, so some of the expressions are a little bit different. But then there was like this big trend going on in Brazil about Nutella and Raiz. I didn't know.
Yeah.
But he goes, do you know what is Nutella? I was like, yeah. It's like, do you know what is Raiz? I was like, yeah. I was like, it's like, what makes Raiz? Raiz means roots. And it's like, do you know what makes the roots hard? What makes a root a root? I was like, yeah, the root is hard. It's like, yeah, my friend, you're the opposite. You are Nutella. And until the day you start becoming hard, I'll call you Nutella forever.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So yeah, that was like a small highlight, but it's like after all, like I think from our coach, one of the things that you learn is like you know, like how like the stereotypical, you look at someone who's a fighter, kind of like not such a big smiley face all the time.
Yeah.
But like in a weird way, it's like a very inspirational person, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I had a pretty similar story with Louise. maybe a little worse actually. Our first time meeting, I was training, like you said, in the non-beginners class, and we were doing some type of drill from half guard or something. And I thought I'd be a little cheeky, as they say in the UK, and try to sweep the guy. But it had nothing to do with the drill. I was just trying to be fancy, trying to make a small name for myself at the gym. Like, oh, this guy's okay. And Luis saw that I was doing this, that I wasn't, following the drill to the T the way he would have liked. And he comes over to me and he says, what did I tell you to do? And I said, oh, sorry, this just the drill, just the drill. And he's like, what were you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm really sorry. I was doing the sweep. And he had the timer in his hand. And he says, if I ever see you do that again, I'm going to take this timer and I'll keep it PG. But he said, I'm going to stick it where the sun doesn't shine. You know what I mean? And that was my first introduction to Luis. I'd never met him before.
Like your first
the
class.
first thing. That's the first thing he ever said to me. And that was the beginning of a beautiful relationship.
Yeah.
So, no, it's amazing.
Actually, like another thing that it's like a big plus on this podcast is like I was talking with someone that I work with, and so I'm like into film, and we were talking about the different departments, and for me it's like I rank everything by belt in terms of my skill level. I was like, oh, like writing I'm a blue belt, sound I'm a purple belt, and it's like she was like, oh, that is interesting, and that's kind of like the way we also approach learning, which is like a big part of life. Like I think we think that it seems like once you finish school, you never have to learn again, but every single step in every single area of your life, you have to keep learning all the time, right?
Definitely.
So one of the things that we also want to bring to the podcast is this aspect of learning, but also through the lens of jiu-jitsu. Like sometimes you're doing something and you don't even, it's like, I mean, in jiu-jitsu, if you're fighting against a purple belt and you're a white belt and you don't tap, not that you don't tap, but you manage
to
survive, that's a success, right?
Yeah, big time.
And as you progress, you eventually have to be able to submit him, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how we approach a lot of other parts of learning other skills. So one of the things that John is actually happening right now is to speak Portuguese, and we applying the same concept, not just to that, but to other things. And this is a big part of this podcast is looking through the eyes, through life and through learning through the lens with the lens of jiu-jitsu. So yeah, bro. One segment we want to introduce here in the podcast is sharing Portuguese lesson. But first, what belt are you in Portuguese?
Yeah, that's funny that you asked that. Someone actually asked me that question earlier, but from a different lens. I was in the gym earlier today, and someone said, "Oh wow, your Portuguese is getting so good. How did you learn Portuguese?"
Yeah.
And when he said, "Oh, my Portuguese is so good," I was like, "Well, I think realistically, maybe my Portuguese is like a 5 out of 10." And that's just a scale that I can use with like everyday people who don't do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But then I looked at Luis and I said, would you say my Portuguese is like a 5 out of 10? And he looked at me and said, I'd say that your Portuguese is like a really tough blue belt or like a, brand new purple belt. And it's so cool because we have this new like measure for the way, how good something is or where you need to improve. You and I both understand what it means to be like a tough blue belt.
Yeah.
Everybody at our gym, if you said to them, "Oh, my Portuguese is like a tough blue belt," they'd be like, "Oh, wow, that's pretty good." Like clearly, I'm not a black belt.
Yeah.
Clearly, I'm not a purple belt, but I'm a tough blue belt, which is like a level of respect. And it actually made me feel better than if Luis were to be like, "Oh, he's a 5 out of 10." Like, tough blue belt sounds a lot better to me, and it's a scale we all understand.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, segueing from thank you for that Portuguese plug there. Yes, I am working on my Portuguese. And Iki and I thought it would be really cool, because Iki is a native Portuguese speaker, and I'm a tough blue belt in Portuguese, if we shared with you guys some words that you may hear in the gym quite often, and have always wondered what they mean.
Yeah.
I actually get this a lot. Louise or someone will be saying something in Portuguese, and someone will come up to me and say, What does that even mean? I hear that all the time, but I have no idea what it means." And as a native English speaker, I find Portuguese is one of those languages that context is everything.
Yeah.
Like when you say certain words, it can mean something completely different depending on the way something was said. Should we start off with that first word? Should we?
Exactly. I think you should say, because you sound more Brazilian to me, but Portuguese sounds like more like it's from Portugal.
Okay. And again, guys, my pronunciation is not the gospel. I'm just a tough blue belt, but I'll try my best to help everyone out.
Yeah.
So the first word that I'm sure every listener of this podcast, if you've been training in our gym, has heard 1,000 times is caralho. So I think Iki. Also, if there are any children listening, please turn the podcast off right now.
Exactly. This is the part where the PG-13 is thrown out the window.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why we saved this to the end, because caralho is not the most polite of words, but it's what you hear, and it is what it is. So we thought we'd help you out with what it means and how to use it.
Exactly. So caralho means literally a penis, but on the other note, it can actually mean like it's like it can mean so many things. Like, let's say for example, you're walking and your banana for lunch falls on the floor. You're like, ah, caralho. It's like, oh shit.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, so I hear it in two main contexts.
Yeah,
and
okay.
correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
So just exactly what you just described, some like feeling of
Frustration.
if I were to compare it to an English word, it would actually be fuck.
Yeah.
Like, oh fuck,
Yeah,
I just dropped my banana, or I dropped my lunch, whatever. But then at the same time, it's used in a sort of like, I'm surprised, I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Iki just walks into the room with his brand new belt. Oh, caralho?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, let's say it can be like very aggressive, like caralho. Like you can literally say that to someone.
Yeah.
Like, like you don't really like them. But yeah, if I walk in and I'm a blue belt and you went out for a trip and you just come back and you see me as a blue belt, you're like, caralho. It's like something completely different.
Exactly. So you're gonna hear it in two main contexts, I'd say. When somebody's like upset about something bad went happen, ah, caralho. Or like you did something amazing and people are like, oh, caralho? Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
That sound about right?
But for the most part, I think it's used as a derogative term.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think the derogative term part of it still wins in terms of like how often people use it. But now you have an idea. It's like it's either something good depending on the tone, which is rare. But yeah, you didn't do something good if you hear the word caralho.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That, to be honest with you, that was like probably one of the first 5 words I learned in Portuguese.
Actually, what's funny? In Portuguese, people learn caralho, puta, porra, what? Like in general, like it's in general, like things that Portuguese.
To the
It's like,
bang?
yeah, I mean like bom dia and stuff, but other than that, caralho, puta, porra. I think those are like because like when you learn a new language, you usually learn a swear word.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when you learn Jiu Jitsu. As a beginner, you're already looking up at videos for leg locks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I hope we were able to give the listeners a leg lock for today. A Portuguese leg lock, if you will.
Yeah, anytime. Like, people don't see it coming.
Exactly.
You're not passing guard, just caralho. So,
yeah. So that was a little sample of what we wanted to do with language as well. I mean, I think that learning Portuguese has actually helped me along my jiu-jitsu journey. It's allowed me to connect a little bit more with like the culture surrounding jiu-jitsu, and for all of us YouTube warriors who love to watch jiu-jitsu videos, there's a whole new world of jiu-jitsu videos in Portuguese that us English speakers will never get to experience if you don't learn Portuguese. So
yeah, but you don't have to learn Portuguese.
Not today.
Yeah, I mean, like, I hope also, like, this, like, for example, this mindset of thinking of belt in belt orders or something like that to learning and, like, taking baby steps.
Yeah.
Kind of shines. Oh, it's like, it's, it's, it's reflected here in the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Cool.
Shall we wrap it up?
Yeah.
I'm very surprised we actually made it a whole 25 minutes.
Holy moly
So
macaroni.
if you guys have made it to the end of this podcast, we really thank you, because I can't think of many people that want to listen to us talk for 25 minutes.
Yeah, really much appreciated. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Guys, thank you for listening to the first episode of Jiulosophy. As they say in Portuguese, falou.
Yeah, hello.